The signal came not with a bang, but with a whisper, a repeating pulse of light from beyond Neptune, steady as a heartbeat. It had been there for weeks, unnoticed by most of Earth, drowned out by the noise of a planet still stitching itself back together after decades of fire, flood, and famine. But on the far side of the moon, inside a buried dome of steel and silence, Dr. Alara Voss heard it clearly. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just stared at the screen, her fingers frozen above the keyboard, her breath fogging the cool glass of her monitor. The message wasn't in code. It wasn't encrypted. It was plain, simple, and terrifying. All emerging species are watched. Innocence is required for first contact. Prove your purity, or be quarantined. The words scrolled again, and again, like a judge reading a verdict to a prisoner who hadn't known. There was a trial. Alara's hands trembled as she replayed the transmission. Around her, the Lunar Listening Initiative hummed with quiet life machines breathing, lights blinking, data flowing like blood through silent veins. Outside, the moon's gray dust stretched forever under a black sky full of stars that no longer felt distant. They felt like eyes. She hit the emergency protocol. Within minutes, Earth's Unified Defense Council was live on her screen, faces lined with exhaustion, eyes sharp with suspicion. They'd been expecting this. Not the words, maybe, but the moment, because Earth had known for a long time that they weren't alone. Not since Roswell. Not really. The truth had been buried under layers of lies. But deep in vaults beneath Geneva, Beijing, and Cheyenne Mountain, files had sat for 80 years. Files filled with wreckage, alien alloys, and bodies too strange to name. Small ships had fallen to Earth over the decades. Most were ignored. Some were studied. All were hidden, and through it all, something had been watching. Now, that something had spoken. "The Concorde," said General Anya Petrov, her voice low and rough like gravel under boots. She didn't need slides or charts. She'd read the same reports Alara had. They call themselves the Galactic Concorde. Peacekeepers. Judges. They've been testing civilizations for thousands of years. If a species shows violence without cause, excessive aggression, or moral corruption before achieving spaceflight, they erase it? Erase? Asked a young delegate from Jakarta, pale. Quarantine, Petrov corrected, though everyone knew what she meant. No trade. No contact. No future. Just a wall around your star. Forever. Alara swallowed. But we're not innocent, she whispered. Silence filled the feed. Of course they weren't. Earth had spent the last century burning itself alive. Wars over water, wars over oil, wars over nothing at all. There were videos from the resource wars that still made soldiers vomit. Cities turned to glass. Children used as shields. Nations collapsing into ash. And that was before the climate collapse. Before the Great Drought, before the bioweapon outbreaks in the 2040s, humanity had clawed its way back, barely, with fusion power, with orbital farms, with peace treaties signed in blood and tears. But the scars were still there. And now, someone was holding them up to the light. "They've seen everything," Alara said. "Every bomb, every lie. Every execution streamed online for likes." Petrov leaned forward, her eyes hard. "Then they already think we're guilty." Another voice crackled through Commander Rafe Calder, floating aboard the battle station Aegis near Mars. His face was scarred, his uniform patched. "So what do we do, Beg? Send them a poem about peace? Show them our best schoolchildren holding hands?" "We show them truth," Alara said. "We show them teeth," Petrov countered. The council debated for hours. Some argued for surrender, apologize, plead for mercy, offer to disarm. Others wanted to hide, to shut down all signals, go dark. Pretend humanity had never reached the stars. But Calder had another idea. Mercy isn't given to the weak, he said quietly. It's taken by the strong. Petrov looked at the faces on her screen: scientists, soldiers, survivors. People who had lived through the worst Earth could offer and still chosen to rebuild. She thought of the graves in her hometown, the ones with no names because the records burned. She thought of her granddaughter, who had never seen a blue sky without filters. Then she made her decision. No more hiding, she said. No more lies. If they've been watching us like criminals, let them see what happens when the accused turns and stares back. She stood. We don't ask for innocence. We never had it. But we're not prey. The vote was unanimous. Earth wouldn't beg. Earth would declare itself. Back on the moon, Alara received new orders. Not to decode more signals, but to send one. She typed slowly, choosing each word like a stone placed on a grave. To the Galactic Concord, the message began. You say innocence is required. We are not innocent. We have killed. We have lied. We have fallen. But we have also risen. We feed our enemies when they starve. We send doctors into plague zones. We build libraries after burning cities. We are flawed. We are dangerous. And we are free. She paused. Judge us if you must. But know this, if you come to our system as jailers, you will meet us as warriors. She hit send. The signal shot out past Pluto, past the edge of human maps, into the waiting dark. On Earth, cities dimmed their lights, not in fear, but in focus. Factories hummed under mountains and oceans. Ships in orbit powered up engines that hadn't fired in years. In hidden bunkers, engineers ran simulations of battles no human had ever fought. They were no longer just survivors. They were a warning, and far away, in a council chamber of crystal and light on a world humans couldn't pronounce. The Concord's hierarchy watched the message play again and again. His advisors murmured about quarantine fleets, about purging protocols, about swift and silent justice. But the Archon said nothing, because for the first time in 10,000 years, the Concord had met a species that didn't cower when accused. It stood up. And that, he realized with a cold twist in his gut, was far more dangerous than any weapon on Earth. The wind howled through ruined skyscrapers in old Chicago. In New Delhi, children practiced math under solar lamps. On the moon, Alara stared at the stars, not with hope, not with fear, but with quiet certainty. They had been watched. Now, they were seen. And they were not innocent, but they were ready. The Concorde drones were ghost silent, invisible, floating beyond the edge of the solar system like dust motes in sunlight. They had watched Earth for over a century. They saw wars start and end. They saw cities rise and fall. They recorded every missile launch, every nuclear test, every act of cruelty broadcast on human networks. They never moved, never spoke, just watched. And then, one by one, they stopped watching. It began with drone Sigma 7, stationed near the icy rings of Neptune. Its sensors blinked off. Its data stream cut out. At first, the Concorde assumed a solar flare or system error. But when Sigma 9 went dark 2 days later, then Gamma 3 near Pluto, alarms sounded in the high spire of the Concorde's central command. Something was wrong. On Earth, no one celebrated. Not yet. In a hidden base beneath the ice of Europa, Commander Rafe Calder studied a star map glowing on the wall. Red dots marked the fallen drones. Green dots pulsed where new signals now came from the same drones, but changed. They're not dead, Calder said, his voice rough. They're ours. It had taken years. Decades, really. Since the first alien crash in 1947, Earth's best minds had tried to understand alien tech. Most failed. But after the Great Collapse, when old borders fell and secrets burned, scientists from every nation pooled their knowledge. They learned how Concorde cloaking worked, how their power cores hummed, how their AI thought in patterns, not code, and they waited. Now, with the Concorde's attention fixed on Earth's defiant message, humanity struck not with bombs, but with silence and trickery. Operation Iron Cradle had begun. Calder turned to his team. No uniforms here. Just engineers, hackers, ex-soldiers, and dreamers in worn jackets. They think we're animals, he said. Good. Let them think we're stupid animals playing with sticks. While they watch the front door, we've already slipped in through the basement. Far out in the Kuiper Belt, 5 human ships drifted like wreckage. No engines running. No lights. Hulls scarred and patched. They looked like refugee vessels, old freighters abandoned after Earth's resource wars. But inside, every ship hummed with stolen Concorde tech, jury-rigged to human systems. Their cargo wasn't food or fuel. It was data and deception. Each ship broadcast a weak, broken signal in the language the Concorde used to speak to protected species, gentle, soothing tones meant for frightened children. The message was simple: help, wounded, no weapons, please. It was a lie. The Concorde took the bait. 3 peacekeeper vessels, sleek, white, shaped like blades, detached from a nearby patrol and moved toward the drifting wrecks. Their scans showed no threat, no energy spikes, no weapons, just scared, broken beings seeking aid. Exactly what the Concorde expected from a species that had failed the Innocence Protocol. But as the peacekeepers closed in, the human ships stayed dark, silent, patient. Then, at exactly 0300 Earth time, Calder gave the order. On the lead freighter, the Mender, a young hacker named Tariq flipped a switch. Not a weapon switch. A voice switch. Suddenly, every screen on the Concorde ships lit up not with human faces, but with footage. First, images of Earth. A mother shielding her child in a bombed-out street. Doctors working in tents after a flood. Farmers sharing water during drought. Then switch. Footage the Concorde never meant anyone to see. A Concorde peacekeeper ship landing on a green world. Friendly at first, offering guidance. Then, when the planet's leaders asked questions, the peacekeepers opened fire. Not to kill everyone, just enough to scare the rest into silence. Then they labeled the planet corrupt and moved on. Another clip. A Concorde tribunal falsely accusing a species of aggression because they refused to give up their religion. Then came the quarantine fleet. Then the silence. The footage streamed directly into the peacekeepers' command decks, hijacked through the very drones. The Concorde had left unguarded. Panic spread. "What is this?" cried a Concorde officer, his smooth blue face twisting in shock. "It's truth," Tariq whispered from the Mender. Watching their confusion on his screen, now came the second phase. The human ships powered up, not engines, but jammers. Not to destroy, but to trap. The Concorde vessels found their coms dead. Their navigation scrambled. Their shields flickering as human viruses crawled through their systems. Searching for weaknesses. Then, from behind a nearby ice moon, 3 real warships emerged, small, fast, armored in black composite steel. Not flashy, not grand, just deadly. Calder's voice crackled over the open channel, calm and cold. "You watched us burn. Now we've watched you lie. Who's the monster now?" The Concorde tried to flee, but their systems were too slow, too clean. Built for order, not chaos. Human tech was messy, brutal, full of shortcuts and surprises. One peacekeeper ship exploded not from a missile, but from its own overloaded power core, hacked by Tariq's team. Another spun wildly, its engines locked in reverse. The third tried to surrender. Calder didn't accept. He ordered his ships to disable it, not destroy it. Then, he broadcast its location, along with all the stolen footage to every known species in the Concord database. Using the captured drone network, the signal spread like wildfire across star systems. In one night, humanity didn't win a battle. They started a rebellion. Back on Earth, General Anya Petrov watched the feed from orbit. Her hands were folded, her face unreadable. But her eyes shone. "They'll call us terrorists now," said an aide. "Good," Petrov said. "Let them." Terror isn't just fear. It's the moment your enemy realizes you're not what they thought. In the Concord capital, the High Archon stood before a wall of silent monitors. The footage played on loop. His advisors shouted about traitors, hackers, human savagery. But the Archon saw something else. Strategy, cunning, mercy. Even because Calder had spared one ship. To speak, to spread the truth. "That's not an animal," the Archon murmured. "That's a rival." Meanwhile, on the Mender, Tariq ate a ration bar and stared out at the stars. He thought of his brother, killed in the Jakarta water riots when he was 12. He thought of the Concord calling humans corrupt while doing worse in secret. "We're not innocent," he said to no one. But we're not alone either, because already on distant worlds, other species were watching the footage. Species the Concord had crushed. Species that remembered what freedom felt like, and they were listening. Calder's fleet regrouped near the rings of Saturn. No cheers, no victory songs. Just quiet checks of weapons, shields, oxygen levels. One of his lieutenants asked, "What now, sir?" Calder looked at the map. Red dots where Concord patrols would be searching. Green dots where rebel signals were starting to blink. "We don't hide," he said. "We don't run. We give them a choice. Choice? Join us. Or stand aside." He turned to the comms officer. "Send this to every planet, every station, every ship that can hear. The Concord says only the innocent deserve to speak. We say the guilty deserve to be heard so they can change." The message went out, not as a threat, as an invitation. In the silent dark between stars, something new was growing. Not an empire, not a weapon, but an idea that innocence isn't the goal. Survival is. Justice is. And humanity, flawed as it was, had just lit a match in a galaxy full of shadows. Far away, on a jungle world under twin suns, a rebel leader watched the broadcast. He had scars from Concord chains. His people had been called impure for daring to question. Now, he turned to his fighters and said, "They're not coming to save us. They're showing us how to save ourselves." On Earth, children played in rebuilt parks. Old men told stories of the collapse. And in orbit, ships stood ready not for war alone, but for something harder, for truth, for trust, for the long fight ahead. And Commander Calder, scarred and tired, smiled for the first time in years, because the galaxy had thought humans were a problem to be solved. Now, they were a question the Concord couldn't answer. The summons came not as a threat, but as a surprise. 3 weeks after Operation Iron Cradle, a clear signal pulsed into Earth's networks. No weapons, no warnings, just words. "Appear before the tribunal of Xylos Prime. Present your case. Judgment will follow." Earth's leaders sat in stunned silence. The Concord didn't negotiate. It judged. And it never invited the accused to speak. General Anya Petrov read the message twice. Then she laughed a dry, sharp sound that startled her aides. "They're scared," she said. Scared because the truth was spreading. Scared because rebel whispers now echoed in a dozen star systems. Scared because humanity hadn't begged or hidden. They'd exposed the judge. Petrov volunteered to go alone. No soldiers. No bodyguards. Just her, a sealed data core full of evidence, and a human-made translation chip that could speak in over 200 alien dialects. She wore a simple gray suit, no medals, no rank. Just a woman carrying the weight of her species. The ship that came to fetch her was Concorde-made. Smooth, white, silent. Its crew said nothing as they guided her through jump space to Xylos Prime, a neutral world where law was older than stars. Xylos was strange. Its sky was violet. Its cities floated on magnetic fields. Towers of living crystal rose like trees, humming with ancient energy. Aliens of every shape moved through wide streets, some with claws, some with wings, some like walking stone. All watched Petrov as she walked. Not with hate, not with pity, but with curiosity. She was the first human they'd ever seen. The tribunal hall stood at the city's heart. A dome of black glass opened to the sky. Inside, 12 judges sat in curved seats, some biological, some machine, some something in between. At the center stood a raised platform. That was where the accused spoke. Petrov stepped onto it. She didn't plead. She didn't bow. She plugged her data core into the hall's main port. Then she spoke in simple, basic English. The translation chip turned her words into tones, clicks, and light sounds that every being in the room could understand. "You say we are violent," she began. "Yes, we are. We fight over land, water, even air. We have killed billions of our own. We are not proud of it." A murmur moved through the crowd. "But you," she said, her voice steady, "you call yourselves pure. You say you protect the innocent. Then why did you burn the Krell homeworld?" She tapped the core on the dome's inner surface. Images appeared. Footage of Concorde ships raining fire on a peaceful planet, green fields, blue seas, cities full of children. The Krell had refused to join the Concorde's unity plan, so they were labeled corrupt, their records erased, their name forgotten. "But that's false," cried a blue-skinned judge. "The Krell were violent. They attacked our envoy." Petrov played another clip. This one showed the Concorde envoy planting bombs in a Krell market, then blaming local rebels. The attack was staged. The war invented. Silence fell. She played more. The Jorah, species declared mentally unstable because they worshipped multiple gods. Their entire population placed in relearning camps. The camps had no survivors. The Vexian colonies, cut off from trade because they refused to abandon their ancient language, starved into silence. One by one, Petrov showed the pattern. The Concorde didn't seek innocence. It demanded obedience. And it punished any species that dared to question. "You watch young worlds like hawks," she said. "You wait for one mistake, then you destroy them. Not for peace, for control." A tall, silver-robed judge stood. "You bring old wounds to justify your own sins. Earth's wars were self-made. Your bombs, your plagues, your greed, those are yours alone." Petrov nodded. "Yes, they are ours, and we carry them every day. But we do not hide them. We teach our children what we did wrong so they won't repeat it. Do you do the same?" The judge had no answer. Outside the hall, Commander Rafe Calder's fleet hung in orbit, not close enough to threaten, but visible. His ships didn't fire. They broadcast. Every word Petrov spoke streamed across the galaxy through hacked Concorde relays. On mining worlds, rebel cells paused their work to listen. In quiet homes on forgotten planets, families gathered around old screens, hearing the truth for the first time. And on a high balcony overlooking the hall, Archon Vrel watched. He was old for a Concorde leader, his scales dull, his eyes tired. He had served the Concorde for 200 years, but he'd seen too much. He'd signed too many orders he regretted. When the human message first arrived, he'd argued against war. He'd been ignored. Now, he saw Petrov not as a criminal, but as a mirror. Back in the hall, Petrov held up a small cube recording from Earth. She played it. Not of war. Not of pain. Of a school in Nairobi, where children of enemy tribes sat together learning math. Of a hospital in Siberia, where doctors treated wounded soldiers from both sides of a border clash. Of a community in New Zealand that gave its last clean water to refugees from a drowned island. This is also us, she said. We are not good, but we try. Every day, we try. She looked at the judges. You want innocence? There is no such thing in a universe this old. But there's choice. We chose to come here. Not to lie. To face you. To say, judge us fairly or not at all. Then she stepped down. The judges conferred in low tones. The crowd waited, but before they could speak, alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the dome. A voice boomed from the sky. Tribunal suspended. Security breach. Hardline Concord enforcers, loyal to the old ways, had launched a strike. Not at Xylos. At Earth. Their fleet, hundreds of ships strong, had jumped into the Sol system. Their goal, not to talk. To end humanity before the truth spread further. Petrov's face didn't change. She'd expected this. On the balcony, Vrel turned to his aide. Send the signal, he whispered. Far away. In hidden hangars across the Concorde's outer territories, rebel ships powered up. They'd been waiting for this moment. Back in the hall, Petrov walked calmly to the exit. No one stopped her. Some judges looked ashamed. Others afraid. As she stepped into the violet light of Xylos, she looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, Calder's fleet was moving. Earth's defenses were waking. And the galaxy was watching. She didn't fear the coming war, because this time, humanity wouldn't fight alone. She walked to the landing pad where her ship waited. Not a prisoner, not a beggar, a witness. Behind her, the tribunal hall stood empty. Its judgment unfinished. But the real trial had just begun, not in a courtroom, but in the hearts of every being who'd heard her words. On Earth, cities went dark not in fear, but in preparation. In orbit, kinetic rods aligned. Under ice and stone, factories roared to life. And in the silence between stars, a question spread like fire. Who are the real monsters? Petrov boarded her ship. The engines hummed. She didn't look back. There was no time for trials now. Only action. Only truth. Only war. The Concorde fleet came like a storm, silent, fast, and endless. Hundreds of ships filled the space beyond Neptune. Sleek white hulls, sharp as knives, glowing with cold blue power. They carried no messages. No warnings. Just death wrapped in order. Their orders were clear. Wipe Earth's orbital defenses, disable its cities, and leave the planet quarantined. A tomb under glass. But Earth was ready. Commander Rafe Calder stood on the bridge of the Aegis, his eyes fixed on the main display. The enemy fleet was 10 times larger, 10 times faster. Their shields could shrug off nuclear strikes. Their weapons could split asteroids in half. And Calder smiled, because Earth wasn't fighting with the Concorde's rules. Sound the alert, he said. All stations, go dark. Across the Sol system, human ships powered down. Not just engines, every light, every signal, every heat source. From Mars orbit to the rings of Saturn, the human presence vanished. To the Concorde scanners, it looked like panic. Like surrender. It was neither. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden inside hollowed-out rocks, swarm drones powered up. Small, black, and smart. Each no bigger than a human hand. Millions of them. Programmed not to attack, but to learn. To watch. To find the weak spot in Concorde shields, the one Archon Vrel had sent in a secret data burst just hours before. The Concorde didn't know their own weakness. Their shields ran on harmonic resonance, beautiful, perfect, and fragile. One wrong frequency, and they would shatter like glass. The drones knew the frequency. Far below. On Earth, cities dimmed. Not out of fear, but focus. Power was rerouted from homes to defense grids. In Antarctica, under 2 miles of ice, a factory built nothing but tungsten rods, long, heavy, and dumb. No explosives, just mass and speed. Earth's oldest weapon, gravity. On the moon, Dr. Alara Voss watched the enemy approach. She wasn't a soldier, but she had one job: control the orbital ring, a giant loop of steel circling Earth, once used to launch supplies. Now it was a gun. "Wait for my mark," she whispered into her cum. The Concorde fleet split into 3 groups. One moved toward Mars, expecting a fight. One aimed for the moon. The largest, led by a command ship called Purity's Light, headed straight for Earth. Calder let them come. When the first Concorde scouts reached Mars orbit, they found nothing. No ships, no resistance. Just silence. Then the swarm drones struck. Not with lasers. Not with missiles. They flew in tight clouds, humming the exact frequency that tore through Concorde shields. Where they passed, blue energy fields flickered, then died. Mars defense batteries, hidden under red dust for decades, woke up. Railguns fired. Not at ships. At their now unshielded engines. 2 Concorde destroyers exploded before they even fired a shot. Panic spread through the fleet. Back at Earth, Purity's Light slowed. Its commander, a rigid enforcer named Kale, demanded answers. Where are their weapons? Where is their fleet? He didn't see the trap, because Calder wasn't on Earth. He was near Jupiter. His real fleet, only 12 ships, hid behind the gas giant's largest moon, Ganymede. They weren't there to fight. They were there to move planets. Human engineers had spent years placing small gravity tugs on Jupiter's inner moons. Tiny engines, barely noticeable. But together, they could nudge a moon just enough. And they had Io, volcanic and heavy, now sat slightly off its old path. Its gravity pulled at Europa. Europa pulled at Ganymede. And Ganymede pulled at the Concorde fleet as it passed. Jupiter's orbit. It was a chain no one saw coming. Kale's ship turned toward Earth, but the path was now bent by invisible forces. The fleet drifted off course, drawn toward Jupiter's crushing gravity well. "Correct thrusters!" Kale shouted. Too late. The Aegis fired first. Not weapons, but beacons. Bright pulses that marked the Concorde ships for Alara on the moon. She didn't hesitate. Fired the ring. Around Earth, the orbital ring spun faster. Magnetic coils charged. Then, with a deep hum that shook the skies, it launched its first rod. Not at a ship. At empty space. But that space was where the Concorde fleet would be in 6 minutes, pulled by Jupiter's trap. The rod, moving at 20 kilometers per second, punched through the lead ship like paper. No explosion. Just sudden, silent ruin. Then came the second rod. And the third. From the ground, people in Tokyo, Nairobi, and Buenos Aires looked up. They saw streaks of light, not fire, but falling metal. Earth answered the gods in the sky. The Concorde fleet broke formation. Ships turned, fired blindly, crashed into each other. Their perfect order became chaos. And through it all, the swarm drones kept humming. On the Aegis, Calder watched the battle map. Red dots. Concorde ships flickered out one by one. But he knew this wasn't victory. Just survival. Then came the broadcast. General Petrov's voice filled every human channel, calm and clear. She was still on Xylos, but her message traveled faster than ships. "You accused us of being monsters because we fight to survive," she said. "But you kill to feel pure. Which of us is truly innocent?" The words played not just on Earth, but on every stolen Concorde relay, on rebel ships, on hidden stations, even inside some Concorde vessels where young officers began to question. On the bridge of Purity's light, Cale heard it. For a second, his hands shook. He had been taught that humans were savages. But savages didn't build gravity traps, didn't spare enemy ships to spread truth, didn't stand in a tribunal and admit their sins while exposing yours. He looked at his dying fleet, at the rods still falling, at the swarm drones dancing like ghosts through his shields, and for the first time, he felt doubt. That doubt spread. Two Concorde ships broke off, not fleeing but turning off their weapons. A sign of surrender. Or rebellion. Back on Earth, people didn't cheer. They held their breath. They helped neighbors to shelters. They shared food. They waited. Because they knew the cost. In orbit, the Aegis took heavy fire. Shields failed. Hull cracked. Calder bled from a cut on his brow, but he stayed standing. We bought time, he told his crew. Now the galaxy decides. He ordered the remaining human ships to retreat, not to hide, but to guard the outer colonies. Earth was scarred, but not broken. And above it all, the swarm drones kept flying. Not to kill. To witness. To remember. As the last Concorde ship limped away broken. Burning but a live silence returned to the Sol system. No music played. No flags waved. Just the hum of machines rebuilding. And far away, on 1,000 worlds, others watched the battle footage. They saw humans use tricks, not just terror. Mercy, not just might. They saw a species that knew it was flawed. And fought anyway, not for glory. For tomorrow. On Earth, a child in Mumbai picked up a piece of fallen metal, a shard from a Concorde drone. It was warm. She didn't throw it away. She put it in her pocket. Maybe to study it, maybe to remember. Either way, she kept it. Because the war wasn't over. But for the first time, humanity wasn't alone in it. And in the quiet dark. Commander Calder looked at the stars, not as enemies, but as future allies. He whispered 3 words his grandmother taught him during the Great Drought. Hold, build, hope. Then he turned back to work. The war ended not with a treaty, but with silence. The Concorde Armada limped home broken. Not destroy humanity, hadn't the power for that, but shattered in spirit. Their ships returned with empty bays, cracked hulls, and crews who no longer believed in purity. Whispers of rebellion spread through their cities. On 12 worlds, species once too afraid to speak now raised their voices. The footage of Earth's tribunal, of Jupiter's trap, of Petrov's words, they played on screens in markets, in schools, in hidden rooms. The High Archon was gone. Replaced not by force, but by choice. Archon Vrel stood before the Concorde Council, his old scales gleaming under soft light. He did not speak of punishment. He spoke of change. The Innocence Protocol is a lie, he said. It was never about peace. It was about control. And we have lost the right to control. He proposed a new law. No more secret judgments. No more silent watchers. From now on, every emerging species would be told the truth. They would be offered help, not tests. And if they chose war, they would face it with open eyes, not blind fear. The vote passed, not unanimously, but enough. Meanwhile, Earth did not celebrate with parades. There was no victory monument. Instead, engineers rebuilt what was broken. Farmers planted crops in fields once lit by missile fire. Children returned to schools with new lessons, not just math and history, but ethics, alien languages, and the cost of silence. And then, the messages began to arrive. Not from the Concorde. From others. A ship from the Jura system, a people once labeled unstable. For their many gods sent a simple gift. Seeds that grew in poisoned soil. They had survived their own quarantine. Now, they offered help. the Krull survivors few, but Alive sent star charts of safe routes through asteroid fields, paths the Concorde had kept secret. Even former enemies reached out. A small fleet from the Helix Collective, once loyal to the old Concorde, requested permission to dock at Luna. Their leader, a tall being with silver eyes, said only, "We wish to learn how to be flawed and still be free." Earth said yes. No weapons, no secrets, just open docks and shared tables. Deep in the outer system, near Pluto, a new station floated. Not built by humans alone. It was a joint project: humans, former Concorde rebels, Jura engineers, and Krull historians. They called it Watcher's Rest. Its job was not to spy, but to listen. To offer help to young species reaching for the stars. To say, you are not alone. You do not have to be perfect. Just honest. Dr. Alara Voss was its first human director. She stood on the observation deck, watching a small ship from a water world arrive. Its people had just built their first space vessel. They were scared, full of questions. Alara didn't give them tests. She gave them tea, and a data chip with Earth's full history, every war, every mistake, every act of kindness. Read it, she said. Then decide what kind of people you want to be. Back on Earth, General Petrov walked through a park in Geneva. The trees were young, planted after the last war. She sat on a bench, watching children play human, Jora, and one small Krull child with bright green eyes, laughing as it chased a floating light ball. A man sat beside her. It was Commander Calder, his face still scarred, but his steps lighter now. "They're calling us heroes," he said quietly. Petrov shook her head. "We're not heroes. We're just people who refuse to lie." Calder smiled. "That's enough." In classrooms across the planet, teachers told the story, not as a tale of glory, but as a warning and a promise. They taught that strength isn't in never falling. It's in standing up after you do. That innocence is a child's gift, but accountability is an adult's duty. And in orbit, the old warships were being turned into hospitals, farms, and schools. The Aegis became a mobile university, teaching engineering to students from 3 species. No one forgot the cost. Names of the dead were carved into stone walls on the moon, not just human names. Concorde names 2 officers who chose to surrender, who died trying to stop their own fleet. Their names were honored, not as enemies, but as those who saw the truth too late. Archon Vrel visited Earth once. He walked through old Chicago, touching the melted glass of a building hit in the 2040s. He did not speak for a long time. Then he said, "You kept your scars. You did not hide them." Petrov nodded. "Because they remind us. Pain is not weakness. Denial is." Years passed. More ships came. Not all friendly. Some still believed in purity. Some still saw humans as monsters. But now, Earth wasn't alone. A new alliance formed, not an empire, not a fleet, but a network. They called it the Open Circle. Its only rule: share truth, offer choice, never judge in secret. And through it all, humanity remained. Human. They argued. They made mistakes. They sometimes forgot their own lessons. But when they did, others reminded them. And they listened. One evening, a young girl on Mars born after the war asked her grandmother, "Are we the good guys now?" Her grandmother, who had fought in the resource wars, held her hand and said, "No, we're not good, but we try. Every day, we try to be better than we were yesterday. That's all anyone can do." Far from Earth, near the edge of known space, the Watcher's Rest Station sent its first message to a new world. Their species had just sent a signal into the void, simple, hopeful, full of music. The station replied not with judgment, but with a question. What kind of future do you want to build? And then it waited. Not as a jailer, not as a god, just as a friend. On Earth, The wind blew through fields of wheat and solar panels. In cities, lights glowed warm and steady. In orbit, ships of many shapes moved together. Not in formation, but in conversation. The galaxy had expected angels. It found humans. Flawed, fierce, forgiving. And in their broken, stubborn hearts, something the Concord had forgotten. Hope with teeth, not blind hope. Not perfect hope. But hope that fights. That builds. That shares. And that, more than any weapon, changed everything.